hi everyone. This is Aubrey from Twisted Trinkets, and today I'm going to show you how to make a basic wire wrapped ring for beginners. All right, so supplies. Here we are. I have a beautiful glass jewel bead, and it's got a hole in the center of it. Okay, my pliers, I've got wire cutters and bent chain nose pliers. This is 20 gauge copper wire, and I have a piece of that I've cut off that's about 15 inches long. Okay, and then I've got my handy dandy ring mandrel to measure the size of my ring, and I have my jeweler's hammer for finishing touches at the end. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to take my 15 inches of copper wire here, and I am going to thread on my bead. Okay, and I'm going to make sure that it's in the middle of my wire. Okay, so now I'm going to take my ring mandrel, and I'm a size 6 ring. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to start it at a size bigger because it's going to shrink as we go. So I'm going to put it at the 7, okay, and I'm just going to bend it around both sides to make sure that it's where I want it to be. All right, so now you'll notice that in the back we have a top wire and a bottom wire. So I'm going to take the top wire and wrap it around the top but behind the bead 2 times. Okay, so 1 and 2. Okay, and I'm going to just leave it straight out. All right, now I'm going to do the same thing with the bottom wire. I'm going to wrap it around 2 times, staying on the bottom of the wrap and going underneath the bead. Okay, so I've got 1 and 2 times. Okay, leaving it in the front next to the bead. All right, so now what I'm going to do is make sure that it keeps its shape. So I'm going to make sure that my beginning wire is still at that size 7. Okay, and I'm going to pull both of my wires, which are going in opposite directions, and I'm going to bend my top wire down and my bottom wire up, just so that it secures where I want it and the bead. Okay, so now I'm making sure that I'm still at my size 7. I've got my top wire bent down, my bottom wire bent up. I'm going to go ahead and take this off the ring mandrel. Okay, so what you'll notice here now is that I have my 4 coils for my band, and none of them are overlapping. Okay, they're all perfectly side by side. Okay, so I'm going to pinch this in the back, and I'm going to do 1 loop on each side to secure it. All right, I'm going to make sure to keep my finger in the middle of it so that it keeps its shape, and I'm going to take this wire and just keep following the direction that it's going. All right, and I'm going to loop it once around all 4 coils that I'm using for the band of my ring. Okay, and that's just to secure that one side. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side where I keep following the direction, but I'm just going to make sure that my band stays intact at the right size. So I'm going to wrap this once around here just to make sure it's secure. Okay, now I'm going to put this ring back on my ring mandrel. I'm just going to make sure that it stays at that 7. Okay, and it is. I don't know if you can see the numbers, but I am like covering my 7 here on the side. Okay, so that's perfect. It's exactly where I want it. You'll notice that I still don't have my wires crossing along the back. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take that off. All right, now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to make sure to hold the bead and the band between my finger and my thumb, and I'm going to pinch them together. And this is going to keep the integrity of the wire good. Okay, so I'm going to take my side and I'm going to wrap it 4 or 5 times around the side of the band of the ring. And I'm going to make sure to keep it tight so that not only is it sitting next to the wire next to it, but I want it tight around the band as well. So there's 1. Well, we already did 1, the 1 to anchor it. So this is 2, this is 3. Okay, and then 1 more makes 4, right? Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. Okay, where I'm holding the ring between my thumb and my pointer finger. I'm just going to wrap it 4 times around this side as well, making sure that my band doesn't warp and that it stays intact. Okay, so I did my 1 to anchor it. Here's my 2. Okay, here's my 3. Okay, and here's my 4. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pinch these with my bent nose pliers so that they are nice and tight and snug and side by side, and they look like the most beautiful coil you've ever seen in your whole freaking life. Right there, like that. Okay, and then I'm gonna flip it over and do the same thing to the other side so that these 4 coils are nice and pretty and tight, and they'll look like the most beautiful coil you've ever seen in your whole freaking life. Okay, now I'm gonna snip the ends off. I ended them both on the backs, so I'm gonna clip this as close to the band as I can get it. Now, I don't know about you, but whenever I use my wire cutters and I try to like clip the ends, I always have something that shoots off into the oblivion. So what I'll do is that I'll position my wire cutters behind or where I want them to be, and then I'll like hug my piece with my hand so that when I finally clip it, which you can hear, it doesn't shoot the wire off into the unknown. Okay, so there's my ends. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is that I'm just gonna make sure that my coil has stayed tight with my bent chain nose pliers. And then I'm gonna tuck my end so that it's not all sharp and scary. Okay, so tuck, 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 tuck. All right, and when I do that, I should be able to run my finger over it and not get stabbed. Okay, so other side, I'm gonna make sure that my coil stayed nice and tight. Okay, and then tuck my end so that it's not all stabby. Tuck, 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 tuck. Nice and smooth. Okay, so for me, I don't like my bands to get all bunched up like this. I feel like they pinch me a lot easier. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna put this back on my ring mandrel now. Okay, and I should be really, really close to my size 6 that I wanted to end up at, which I am, which is good. So I'm going to make sure that my wires on the back of my ring lay relatively flat on the mandrel, make sure that they're not crossing over. And then I'm going to take the nylon side of my jewelry hammer here, and I'm going to hit not only in, but also in like a downward motion too, so it's going to look a lot like this. Okay, but I'm just going to hit it a few times, and what it's going to do is that it's going to stretch, what it's going to do is that it's going to stretch the wire out, okay, and it's also going to flatten it up against the mandrel here so that I have this nice flat band on the back of my ring that's not going to pinch me. So after hitting it just a few times, you'll notice that I'm at my size 6 pretty happily now. My band is nice and flat, and I can take my chain nose pliers and just squish them together a little bit so that they lay nicely next to each other without any spaces. Okay, so it's nice and smooth. All right, I'm going to take it off my ring mandrel, and that is it. I have a beautiful piece of art to wear on my finger with a nice flat band so that it does not hurt. So when I put it on, ta-da, and the back is all nice and flat. That's it.